Shields up, Ironbreakers. It seems that Helldivers 2 has had its worst ever weekend, and this does include the launch period during which everybody was screaming at Arrowhead Studios to fix the game because the game was pretty busted. A lot of people couldn't connect to its servers, and the few people that were able to connect to the servers wouldn't really be able to progress their accounts, so you'd pick up a bunch of medals and super credits and all that stuff, and when you extract it from your mission, you wouldn't actually get any of those things that you collected during that mission, which meant that you were pretty much just playing for fun, which is not necessarily a terrible thing, but obviously it didn't feel particularly good when you're putting in all this effort to get a bunch of goodies and then you would actually not get those goodies when you finish the missions. Yes, for those of you that don't remember or that joined in late on Helldivers 2, the launch experience was actually severely problematic. But anyways, before we go any further in this video, it is important for me to mention, in the interest of full disclosure, I did receive a review code for Helldivers 2 from PlayStation Portugal back when it launched, so I just want you guys to be aware of that. But anyways, let's get into what's been happening because it's been one hell of a chaotic situation throughout this weekend. However, the advantage that I haven't really been able to report on this up until now is that now I can give you guys the full breakdown of everything that took place during the weekend, as well as the resolution that we got earlier this morning from PlayStation. Now, I might be missing one or two nuanced points here because, like I said, this has been a very chaotic situation online, but I think I'll be able to give you guys the gist of pretty much all that went down. So let's get things started. First, we had this post from the Helldivers 2 team, which was posted on a Friday. Now, one of the things about a team posting stuff on Fridays, particularly when it is something that is considered somewhat of a bad news, this is kind of like standard practice within the industry. It's like, hey, we deliver bad news on Fridays because oftentimes people aren't really paying that much attention to it on a Friday because people are going away for weekends or whatever, everybody's making plans. There's always a higher chance that if something bad is happening on a Friday, there will be less coverage of it. However, that clearly wasn't the case this time around, and there's a bunch of reasons as to why that happened, which we're going to be getting into, but suffice it to say, the backlash from what happened here is going to forever be present in Helldivers 2 life cycle. I don't really know if the game can even fully recover from this, because this was one of the most cherished releases of 2024, and after the action that was taken here by Sony, apparently everything points that this was a Sony thing. I don't know if we can ever go back to the point where it's like, oh no, this is our cherished game, we're going to be championing for this game, because a lot of people really are championing for Helldivers 2 because it is an awesome game. I myself have said it. This is an amazing game. I think this is live service done right in a lot of ways, which is absolutely impressive because so many companies manage to completely destroy live service releases by just pure greed, and they came very close to destroying this title on one single weekend. It's actually impressive. But anyways, on Friday, we received this communication here, which says, Helldivers, an important message from our partner PlayStation about account linking for PC players and its significance in providing player safety features. Read the full message here. Now, I'm not going to be reading you this whole thing. You guys can pause the video and read it yourselves if you want to. But fundamentally, the idea here is that PlayStation says from now on, if you want to play Helldivers 2, you are going to be needing a PlayStation Network account. Regardless of whether or not you actually own a PlayStation, you're going to need a PlayStation account. So this is something that was supposed to go into effect for every new player moving forward. So if you were to buy Helldivers, after this had been said, if you were to buy Helldivers then, you would be required to create a PlayStation Network account. And for people that were already playing the game, they would be required to create a PlayStation Network account by the end of the month of May. Otherwise, they would no longer be able to play the video game. Now, it's important to mention that this was supposed to be a mandatory requirement on release of the game, even though there's a couple of things that we need to talk about that, but this was supposed to be something that was required on launch, but it was suspended because of those server problems that I told you about earlier during launch where people couldn't really log into the servers. And I know that it's going to be very easy for a lot of people to say like, oh, why is this always an issue? Companies really don't plan for this stuff. Like, come on. But the reality is, this is not really the fault of Arrowhead Studios, or in this case, in terms of just server capacity, it wasn't even the fault of PlayStation because they actually planned for 10 times the player counts of the previous Helldivers game. So it's not like, oh, we're going to be very conservative in our estimates. I believe that the previous Helldivers had like a peak of, I forget what the peak was, but I remember distinctly at the time that people were discussing, we made it so that we could basically have 10 times the capacity of the previous game. And that wasn't enough because the game was just so incredibly popular, right? And that was when the decision was made by the Arrowhead Studios CEO that like, hey, look, we need to cut off this account linking process because this is one of the things that is overloading our servers. We need to just have people not need to do any of this and so that we can solve this problem, right? And that's what they ended up doing. And now Sony's coming back and like, okay, the launch period is kind of over. It's time for us to institute back the whole PlayStation sign-in thing. However, this is obviously something that is completely tone deaf because anybody that is in touch with the PC gaming community knows that people are not going to want to have to create a PlayStation Network account. Because that's just the way that it is. They already have to create an account for Ubisoft games, create accounts for EA games, create accounts for Microsoft, depending on whatever game you're playing. Nobody likes doing this. Now, the problem with Helldivers 2 comes from the fact that if they had forced that integration day one, players would begrudgingly accept it, just like they begrudgingly accept all of the other accounts. Despite what some people are saying that, you know, PC gamers don't really mind creating accounts for all these other services, I'm like, have you been paying attention? Clearly, they do fucking mind. They just do it begrudgingly. That's, you know, there's not something that the community is like, oh yeah, I'm perfectly fine creating a Ubisoft account or whatever. No, people always begrudge that type of stuff. And there's plenty of people that don't even buy those games specifically because of those annoying requirements. So this is not something that all of a sudden the PC gaming community is like, oh man, we're going to choose this one game to rebel against. No, they've always been against this. The difference is when it came to Helldivers 2, they didn't enforce it at launch. If it wasn't forced at launch, majority of people probably wouldn't even care. But there's a lot more to it than that. Now, I basically mentioned this situation because we start seeing people review bomb the game because that's kind of like something that consumers tend to do. And we're going to get deeper into this review bomb, but basically I said, this doesn't affect me because, you know, even day one, I just linked it with my PlayStation. I was actually kind of disappointed that I linked it with my PlayStation and there was no cross-save progress. I was like, what do you mean? How come there's no cross-save progress? I want to be able to play my character on PC and then go to the PlayStation and progress there. I don't know if it's been implemented since then because I haven't really played Helldivers in a while, but on release, there was no cross-save progress, and that was very surprising to me because that's what I thought would be the whole point of linking your account. But, you know, so this doesn't affect me, but I completely understand why people don't want to have to deal with creating or linking accounts, not to mention certain countries apparently can't even get a PlayStation account. This should be illegal months after release, to be honest, and that's pretty much how I feel about it. Now, naturally, a lot of people pointed out that, like, hey, look, they've always said you're going to have to do this. And you can see this is the official Helldivers 2 page on Steam. And if you actually scroll down, you'll notice that it says here incorporates third-party DRM and Protect Game Guard, which, by the way, this was another thing because this is a kernel-level anti-cheat. And a lot of people were not happy about this one either. A lot of people boycotted the game based on this alone. But then it also says requires third-party account, PlayStation Network, supports linking to Steam account. So it actually lists this as a requirement on the official Steam page. However, an interesting thing that I've started noticing is that somebody else pointed out on Twitter, this is from user OdraMH, Sony is covering their tracks after the Helldivers 2 debacle. Are trying to gaslight all customers that are going to lose access to the game they paid because PSN is not available in their countries. The internet does not forget. So I'm assuming that this is something of an FAQ on the Sony website or something like that. I tried finding this specific page. I wasn't able to find it, but I've just briefly looked over it, but there's an even more interesting thing that I'm going to be bringing up. But anyways, and here it says, do I have to sign to PSN to play a PlayStation game on PC? This was before May 3rd, which is when the news was dropped. And they said signing into PSN is optional when playing PlayStation games on PC. And then after May 3rd, they changed this to some PlayStation games may require you to sign in and link to an account for PSN. Now, whether or not this has happened, I'm going to take this user at their word, but regardless of that, I have an even better one. So I don't know if this has been changed today or not, but this is the direct PlayStation page. This is where you can actually go to buy video games directly from PlayStation. And in there, they are selling the Helldivers 2 PC version, which you can see right here. And if you scroll down, there's a bunch of stuff where they talk about the game, the requirements, all of this stuff. And then eventually, PC frequently asks questions. Do I need a PSN account to play PlayStation games on PC? And in here it says, no, you currently do not need a PSN account to enjoy PlayStation Studio games on PC, but you will need a Steam account to redeem your voucher code. Some of our PlayStation Studio titles also offer incentives for linking your Steam and PSN accounts. So on the official PlayStation page, today, I don't know if they changed this during May 3rd or not. I don't know if there's like a history to this page. But today, it still says you do not need a PSN account to enjoy PlayStation Studios on PC. So, you know, there's a lot of people that are saying you always needed it. And then there's a lot of people that are saying, actually, you kind of didn't. And we can find evidence of both, which is interesting. So on Steam, they say you always needed it. But then on the official PlayStation pages, they say you don't. So it's a little bit of conflicting information. But that's not all, right? Because then, as the situation evolved, now I don't know if you guys have been to the Helldivers Discord, but I can definitely tell you that was one hell of an active Discord around launch. And I'm going to assume that as the popularity of the game grew, that Discord has been probably exploding in popularity. But today, going into that Discord is probably going to be pointless because they probably filtered out a lot of these messages, so we can find some of the messages that were posted from the community managers over on X. So right here we have a message from Spitz. It's not like this is the first or even the 14th mainstream game to require a third-party account that takes a couple of minutes to create, but if it's a deal breaker to have to take 120 seconds out of your day to enter an email and password, then forget about it. Now, an important thing to mention is that when it comes to PSN accounts, it's not just entering an email and password. I know this because I've created multiple PlayStation accounts, sometimes to deal with the situations wherein, for instance, I might not be able to get in touch with a publisher from Europe to get like a PlayStation game, so I'll try to see if I can get in touch with the US branch because most of my audience does hail from the States anyway. And then if they send me a code to PlayStation, I'm going to need to have a US PlayStation account. Now, an important thing when it comes to PlayStation accounts is that they require an address. In case you guys are wondering, well, how do you get a US address for your PlayStation, Rurikhan, because you don't live in the US? I find a random hotel and I use that. Yes, I do. It is what it is. Like, look, sometimes some publishers from Europe don't want to work with me, so I work with publishers from the US, and I use a US PlayStation account. It's just that simple. It is what it is. And I know this is probably against PlayStation's TOS. Feel free to report me, get my account banned, do whatever you want. Like, look, I'm not cheating anybody here. I'm just trying to do my job. That's just how it goes. But anyway, so there's a lot more to making a PSN account than just an email. I don't even know if nowadays they even require maybe cell phones, because I know that stuff has gotten a little bit more aggressive with the amount of data that they need. So it is not just an email and password, okay? It's not really just that simple. I know that at least you need the address. I don't know what else you do. Nowadays, they might ask you for your social security number. But regardless of that, you know, he says, forget about it, change your Steam review, and make your displeasure known on a platform where it matters. So obviously Spitz here is getting a little bit frustrated, and I can completely sympathize with this. I know that a lot of people are going to say, it's the community manager's job to deal with their community, but I think that a lot of times people forget that the individuals behind these accounts, they're still human. Yes, they're community managers, but they're still human. And any human that receives a significant amount of negative feedback at a certain point is going to get annoyed. Anybody that's ever worked retail will be aware of that fact. So everybody can say, oh, you have to be professional, you have to be, you know, and some people can take more abuse than others. It's that simple. I know that I myself have sometimes snapped back at people maybe a little bit more aggressively than I should because of an onslaught of negative feedback, because people can get really nasty on the internet, in case you weren't aware. And then we have another one here where apparently this user named Eternal Sweet said, this will kill Helldivers 2 on Steam, backpedal or lose your player base. And he says, I thought you were refunding and leaving. And again, you know, This is where I said, I think that Legendary drops made a post. He said, I think a lot of CMs are qualified on paper, but are not socially qualified for their job. I think the Helldivers 2 situation shows that. With that said, we ask for an unfathomable amount of control and patience from game studios while showing absolutely none ourselves. Yes, I think that particularly the people that are completely snapping back at these community managers, you should be aware that you yourself aren't really exercising you are exercising some degree of self-control, but probably not as much as you should have if you were talking to somebody like, say, face-to-face, right? And the problem becomes, again, after somebody receives enough negative feedback, people are going to snap. It's just that simple. Now, we also have another message here with the Ackman pointing out yet another community manager who says, first of all, it's Sony's decisions, not ours. When somebody was asking, country that does not have PSN work, if I use VPN, will I be banned? I think that it says, will I be banned? The image is not full here. But anyways, he says, first of all, it's Sony's decisions, not ours. Secondly, we don't have all the details about region-related issues. Yes, yet we're chasing Sony to get more info. And it's absolutely insane because there really wasn't that much planning from Sony's part. Suddenly just, okay, we're going to implement this thing and everything's going to be hunky-dory. And then it's like, wait a minute, what about countries that actually don't have PSN? And here is what Sony decided to do when they were like, oh, there's countries that don't have PSN and they're complaining about the fact that they can't make a PSN account. Let us go ahead and fix that real quick. Now, this particular X account is from SteamDB. SteamDB tracks pretty much everything that is happening around Steam, whether that is concurrent users of a video game or is that Steam Charts? Or is Steam Charts powered by SteamDB? I don't know, but these guys basically cover everything that has changed on Steam, right? And basically, Sony's solution to that problem was Helldivers 2 is no longer purchasable in 177 countries where PSN is not available. So like, oh, you guys can't have a PSN account? Well, that's all right. We'll just remove the game. It's like, wait a minute. What about people that already bought the game? Well, tough titties. They're gone. Like, what? When this happened, I was like, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way that anybody would ever make a decision this dumb. But turns out somebody definitely did. Somebody went ahead and they were like, hey, you know what? PSN's not available on those countries. Fuck them. Remove the game from those countries. That's just absolutely insane. But obviously the game then received 215,000 negative reviews. Here's an updated graph. This was taken today. And you guys can tell. This was during the launch period. Like I told you guys, there were problems during the initial launch of the game where people couldn't connect to the servers. So there were a couple of negative reviews here from all of those particular situations. But naturally, the positive reviews greatly overwhelmed it. And because of the way in which this development team conducted themselves with the community, wherein they were constantly doing things for the community, in favor of the community, and actually delivering a proper live service experience, because fundamentally they had already made a really good game. Now it's just about maintaining it, adding content, doing the whole game master thing with Joel and all of that, right? Everybody was having a good time. Everybody was loving the game. The game, absolutely fantastic. But then when they tried forcing this on players like, no, we don't think so. We don't think, no. So right now, the reviews, and this is as of the recording of this video, I expect this to change, hopefully to the positive because of what happened. Keep watching, you guys will understand. But right now, it is on mostly negative. Yesterday, it was on overwhelmingly negative, which I don't know what type of numbers you got to hit for that or whatever. But it is slowly recovering because the community is like, okay, the situation has been solved. I'll tell you guys what the solution was, so everybody's kind of like changing their reviews back to positive. This is a really cool post by the Ackman where he says, pretty funny that the community who has been trained to focus their efforts on a single goal managed to coordinate 100,000 plus negative reviews, more like 200,000 plus. Because like I said, this was an evolving situation. So this was posted by the time people hit 100,000, but since then we've hit 200,000 negative reviews in real life. Our training has paid off. For those of you that aren't too into Helldivers 2 and don't know what exactly this means, it's because Helldivers 2 is like this evolving war situation in terms of the gameplay of the game, wherein the players are kind of like required, if you want to succeed, to focus on specific objectives in the game. And the community has actually been really good about focusing in on those specific objectives. They organize, and they usually do the major orders and get them done really fast so that everybody gets rewards and stuff like that. And apparently that same community was able to organize in real life and completely destroy the rating of this game on Steam. So once this situation happened with the game basically being pulled from a bunch of countries, and the community managers were made aware that, like, wait a minute, this is actually a problem where PSN isn't available. Spitz started, taking some stuff back. Internal discussions are ongoing about the mandatory linking change. While we can't reveal the details, the response from our dev teams has been pretty universally negative, and we're looking for better options. At a certain point, the developers themselves and their community managers were telling players to go ahead, nuke our game from Steam. That's how bad it got, that in order for Arrowhead Studios to get the attention of Sony, they were telling the player base to go and nuke the game. If a better solution isn't provided for players who are in regions without PSN coverage, I'm assured that we won't be making the requirement mandatory for those players. We're not going to force people to either break Sony TOS or not play the game. So I'm assuming that this was Sony gave them some type of assurance. And basically at that point, people were like, well, wait a minute. If those regions aren't going to require a PSN, why should any region require a PSN, right? That changed, the Steam announcement and the FAQ are all coming from Sony and not at our team at Arrowhead. Yeah, I was completely unaware of how many countries didn't have the ability to make a PSN account when I made that statement. I deeply regret implying that it was so easy for everyone to just sign up and not have to worry about it. It's absolutely not our intention to force people to break Sony TOS or not play the game if they're in a restricted region. There needs to be a better solution. Now, I don't think I picked up the Twitter posts where people were actually saying players to go ahead and nuke the game on Steam, but I think the CEO himself had mentioned that. But in here we have this Pyle Stead. This is the CEO of Arrowhead Studios, and he was like, ouch, right in the review score. Well, I guess it's warranted. Sorry, everyone, for how this all transpired. I hope we will make it up again and regain the trust by providing a continued great game experience. I just want to make great games. And this shows that reviews at the time were still mostly positive, and recent reviews were only mixed. Like I've mentioned, that situation has changed significantly since then. But then people were asking Pyle, like, what was the deal with this? And he did admit, I do have a part to play. I'm not blameless in all this. It was my decision to disable account linking at launch, which, like I told you, this was a problem wherein players weren't able to play the game because the servers were getting overloaded. So he made the call to, like, we're going to disable account linking at launch so that players can actually play the game. I did not ensure players were aware of the requirement, and we didn't talk about it enough because they really didn't. Now, I thought that everybody had, linked the account because I just linked it the second they gave me the menu. Hey, link your account. I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. We knew for about 6 months before launch that it would be mandatory for online PlayStation titles. Looks like that's about to change. At least that's what I would expect. Even though I believe that for Ghost of Tsushima, which is coming out in about 10 days from now, for that game, you're probably going to need a PlayStation Network account to play online. But I'm not sure if they're going to be enforcing that after this ridiculous amount of backlash. Ridiculous, but justified. I say ridiculous in terms of scope. I don't mean as unreasonable. I think that this is justified. And if anything, I only wish that the community would do more stuff like this, because there's been so many times where I see like a problem in a video game and I point it out and I get so much backlash, and very rarely do I get a community that actually comes in and supports all of these things, which is one of the reasons why I even stopped wanting to fight this fight, because it just seems like a lot of times the community didn't have my back when I was, when I was struggling against like some type of monetization bullshit or whatever. So it was actually really cool to see. Then Pilestead also posted, also the accidental cape design is pretty cool. From a community game member, this is the this is the review graph. So they might be making a cape out of this, which I think that'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool if they actually make a cape about this. But then finally, The resolution that was established was after all of this backlash, PlayStation took it back. So you can see the official post from PlayStation here. Helldivers fans, we've heard your feedback on the Helldivers 2 account linking update, the May 6th update, which would have required Steam and PlayStation Network account linking for new players and for current players beginning on May 30th, will not be moving forward. We're still learning what is best for PC players, and your feedback has been invaluable. Feedback. Your feedback's been invaluable. Thanks again for your continued support of Helldivers 2, and we'll keep you updated on future plans. Those future plans better not include account linking is all I'm saying. But yeah, that happened. Another situation that happened that I would just like to call out your attention is that apparently people have review bombed the original Helldivers game, which does not have anything to do with this. Because, you know, people, when they get something going online, it's like we're firing off on all directions. Fuck Helldivers 2, fuck Helldivers 1, fuck Sony, probably fuck Magica at this point, because these guys were also the ones who made Magica, and I think Gauntlet. Yeah, it even says it here. What's next? Review bombing Magica and Gauntlet as well, other PlayStation titles. So I do think that it is unreasonable to go back through their previous catalog and completely nuke Arrowhead Studios video games, because Helldivers 1 had nothing like this. It didn't have any PlayStation account linking or anything like that. So, you know, even though the developers have said you should nuke Helldivers 2 with your review stuff because it makes sense to show Sony that, like, hey, we're not going to stand for this, you know, it is what it is. But, yeah, that's kind of like the whole situation, everything that's been happening. One of the biggest problems still that hasn't been addressed, but I would expect it will be addressed within the next couple of days, is that even though Sony has backtracked on this, we don't know what the situation is on the countries where the game has been delisted. I would expect them to basically just relist the game, because that is what makes sense, since there's no longer a PSN account requirement for people to play the game. It doesn't make sense that they wouldn't sell the game on these countries anymore. So I would expect this to get reverted back. But it is important to mention that as of the recording of this video, that still is not the case. But I would, again, logic would dictate that, because you'd just be leaving money on the table if you don't fix this situation, right? And finally, the final conclusion to this whole saga is something that I would actually recommend people to do. And this was posted by Helldivers Alerts, and they say new major order. Major orders are quests that you get when you're playing Helldivers 2. And apparently, you know, now there's still this situation with all of these negative reviews. But, you know, if the situation has been solved, I would recommend people to change their review to positive. I think that would be cool, because the game is still good. The developers fought for the community, and, you know, I just think that if the game is to recover from this, it is going to need a positive, a reverse review bomb, if you would, to kind of like correct everything, because if that doesn't happen, fundamentally, I don't know if the game would ever really recover, because, you know, even though there's a lot of people that are connected to the online sphere and all of that stuff, there's also a lot of people that aren't. And they see a video game that has overwhelmingly negative reviews, you know, your normies, just browsing through Steam, and they see, oh, this game is mostly negative. Why the hell would I play this? Screw this. I don't want to play this game, right? That is one of the situations that will happen, and it will impact the player base in the long run. And personally, I don't think that things are ever going to be the same. I think that the community is going to be impacted from this, regardless of what everybody does, because it is easier to rally people around a negative cause than it is to rally people around a positive cause. That's just the nature of the beast. And this is not me criticizing people for being overly negative. It is just an instinctual thing. We are creatures of instinct, and this is something that was implanted into us as part of our survival instinct, that we are just more responsive to negative things because, you know, oh, it's raining, I should go find shelter, Rain is a negative. We pay attention to it. If it's sunny, it's like, oh, it's nice and warm outside, but you don't pay as much attention to it because it is not a danger, so to speak. Well, nowadays it kind of is with, you know, you can get sunburned and all of that, but whatever. You guys get the point that I'm trying to make. It'd be cool if everybody that put in a negative review because of the situation would go ahead and now turn their review back to positive, is what I'm saying. But that is the whole Helldivers 2 situation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification icon, all of that jazz, because it turns out that May 6th has basically become Managed Democracy Day. This was the day that the Helldivers fought against the most greedy people in Super Earth. And apparently, by all from all interpretations of the situation, it would seem that they have been victorious. Today, let's hope we'll always be victorious when greed arises again. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.